Humans have been thriving on planet Earth for about thousands of years now. We have progressed a lot in making our lives better and adapt to different problems happening in our environment, creating us as the strongest species existing on Earth. We had a vast demographics transition historically and will have again in the following years. So without any further ado, let's get started with this video. Our population growth has escalated so fast that it took over 200,000 years of human history for the world's population to reach 1 billion, and only 200 years more to reach 7 billion. The world population reached 1 billion in 1804, and after another 123 years, it reached 2 billion in 1927. But it only took 33 years to reach 3 billion in 1960. The global population reached 4 billion in 14 years in 1974. 5 billion in 1987, 6 billion in 1999, and the world population reached 7 billion in October 2011. So now we will try to understand the pattern of fertility rates. The fertility rates in developed countries are generally lower than the ones in developing nations. If we consider China and India, the only two nations who have crossed the 1 billion mark in population, there is an insignificant drop on their fertility rates. China and India both had a fertility rate of 6 in the 1950s. China got below 2 in the 1990s because of the one-child policy, and India is expected to go below 2 in the 2030s. The top-most populous countries follow the same trend of decreasing fertilities. World fertility has decreased too, from 5 in 1965 to 2.5 in 2017, and will further decrease by the end of the 21st century if the UN models come out to be true. The highest global population growth rates, with increases of over 1.8% per year, occurred between 1955 and 1975, peaking to 2.1% between 1965 and 1970. The growth rate declined to 1.2% between 2010 and 2015, and is projected to decline further in the 21st century. Total annual birth rates were the highest in the late 1980s, at about 139 million. And as of 2011 were expected to remain essentially constant at a level of 135 million, while deaths numbered 56 million per year and were expected to increase to 80 million per year by 2040. Thus, the gap between birth rates and death rates is decreasing.
So what is the UN saying? On the face, it looks pretty grim. In 2017, the UN put the planetary population at 7.6 billion. It will add more than another billion by 2030, bringing the total to 8.6 billion. After another 20 years in 2050, the number will reach 9.8 billion, so 10 billion give or take. And as our descendants ring in the new century, the planetary population at 2100 will sit at 11.2 billion, at which point our numbers will stabilize and eventually start to decline. Projected figures vary depending on underlying statistical assumptions and the variables used in projection calculations, especially the fertility variable. One extreme scenario predicted a massive increase to 256 billion by 2150, assuming the global fertility rate remained at its 1995 level of 3.04 children per woman. However, by 2010, the global fertility rate had declined to 2.52. The following text is taken from the 2003 United Nations report. If, for sake of illustration, the fertility of countries is kept constant in 1995 to 2000 levels, the world population soars to 244 billion by 2150 and 134 trillion in 2300, which, unrealistic as anywhere in the future, our fertility won't be as high as they were in the 1990s. We can understand it much better by understanding the demographics transition model, which is divided into 5 stages. In pre-industrial society, birth rates and death rates were both high and fluctuated rapidly according to natural events, such as drought and disease, to produce a relatively constant and young population. Countries having this case fall under stage 1. This has a high birth rate and low life expectancy, hence being so curved from the base up. No country falls under stage 1 currently. In stage 2, countries have a higher life expectancy, but still a high birth rate, hence having a much more youthful population, fewer adults than children. Countries in this stage include Yemen, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and much of sub-Saharan Africa. In stage 3, death rates are low and birth rates diminish. As a rule, accordingly leads to enhanced economic conditions, an expansion in women's status and education, and access to contraception. A pyramid is more roundly shaped at birth, and death rates become more evenly balanced. Botswana, Colombia, India, Jamaica, Kenya, Mexico, and South Africa are stage 3 countries. Stage 4 begins in a country where the birth rate decreases, so the amount of children is lesser than the number of adults. Argentina, Australia, Canada, China, Brazil, most of Europe, Singapore, South Korea, and the US are such countries. In stage 5, death rates increase due to an aging population has a higher death rate than a youthful one due to the large proportion of elderly people reaching the end of their natural lives. There are more elderly people per thousand reaching their extended life expectancy. This continues to fall with more women choosing a child-free or child-limited lifestyle. The total population declines as the death rate of an aging population rise higher than the still reducing birth rate. Croatia, Estonia, Germany, Greece, Japan, Portugal, and Ukraine are examples of such countries.
Subreplacement fertility is the total fertility rate, TRF, that if sustains leads to each new generation being less populous than the older. Subreplacement fertility is found to be 2.1 in developed nations, and globally, it is found to be 2.33. As of 2010, about 48%, 3.3 billion people of the world population, lived in nations with subreplacement fertility. Now, more and more countries are going below subreplacement rates each year. Between 2020 and 2100, 90 countries are expected to lose population. 2/3 of all countries and territories in Europe, 32 out of 48, are expected to lose population by 2100. In Latin America and the Caribbean, half of the region's 50 countries' populations are expected to shrink. Between 1950 and 2020, by contrast, only 6 countries in the world lost population. Jorgen Randers is a Norwegian academic who co-authored The Limits to Growth, says, the world population will never reach 9 billion, he now believes. It will peak at 8 billion in 2040 and then decline.
The good news is that the world population will never reach 9 billion people. It will peak at 8 billion in 2040 and then decline. And the reason for this is not starvation, it's not pestilence, it is not war, but it is because the world's women will voluntarily choose to have much fewer children in the future than they have had in the past. As I see it, pass through the replacement rate of 2.1 children per person in the middle of this century, and in the middle of this decade, and as a consequence, the world population will peak and start declining slightly.
Professor Wolfgang Lutz and his fellow demographers at Vienna's International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis predict the human population will stabilize by mid-century and then start to go down. A Deutsche Bank report has the planetary population peaking at 8.7 billion in 2055 and then declining to 8 billion by century's end. Make sure to check out Population 10 Billion by Danny Borling, Empty Planet by Dale Bricker and John Ibbotston. They have helped to make the script of this video. Not all of these predictions are realistic. We will probably see much more than 8 billion people on Earth. Unpredictable events can always happen, and so we can't really know what exactly happens in the future. But it's presumable that the 14 billionth person will never be born if the current trends continue. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. And thanks for watching.